Hey everybody, we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Erin.
I'm Dr. Kristen.
And we're here with our continuing coverage of Danish Heritage Month, which is a month that we made up because we wanted to talk about Danish things. For those of you that missed our first video and our explanation, Dr. Kristen is part Danish and very proud of it. And we spend a lot of time talking about Ireland, which is part of my heritage, because we love Ireland, but also, in fairness, we're balancing the scales with a Danish Heritage Month. And we went from like the top of the barrel to the bottom of the barrel in the last 2 weeks because the film we watched, the 3-hour film we watched for this week, is called Like Per, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. A Fortunate Man is the translated title. It's on Netflix. It was done in 2018. It is billed as a Danish epic, hence the 3 hours, that follows a young man named Peter Andreas Sedanius from his very strict Christian upbringing all the way through his crazy, fantastical genius ideas about hydroelectric power in a nondescript part of the Danish history. Did they ever
1800s.
say 1800s? Okay.
Like 1860s, I think, because it's before the welfare state really started getting kicked off.
Cool.
So I think, 1860s.
And so he's a young man of very good ideas and not very good manners who thinks he should be given everything he wants because he's smart. And that's the 3 hours of the movie, is watching him alternately get and not get what he wants.
Yeah, he's Tony Stark before the Afghanistan cave.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
That's a very great and apt analogy.
It's 3 hours if Tony never got kidnapped.
Yeah. If Tony Stark never learned any lessons from his life experiences.
Crushing father issues.
Yes.
Unmatched genius.
Correct.
Burning every relational bridge possible.
Every single one with like propane torches. This kid just didn't like set a little match and light his relationships on fire. He bombed them out. Yeah, so it's a story of privilege and I guess humility. We were talking a lot yesterday offline about what we think the lesson is for this movie. It's certainly not that I don't hope, supposed to feel empathetic ever.
I don't think so for him, no.
No, I think it's one of those like moralistic lessons that like you have to be humble and gracious and kind and think of other people. And if you're not, you'll end up isolated in your family's house in the wilds of Jutland.
Dying from cancer.
I
mean, one of the main Danish cultural priorities is egalitarianism. Like everything is equal. Everything has to be equal.
Okay.
And it is still like the most robust welfare state on the planet right now. You pay about 60% of taxes because like 80% of your life is paid for. And there's a lot of debates around how that happens. Eating out is super, super expensive because of that. So lots of people cook at home, but they cook like very, open meals for people. Danish hospitality is not famous or anything, but they make sure that people are taken care of quite a lot. Okay. It's the country with the smallest gap between rich and poor in the world. There still is a gap for sure. And, there's controlled capitalism. So there is definitely a gap, but it's a very different mindset than a free market economy, which is what we have in the United States and what Britain ostensibly has as well. And so I was thinking a lot about that and a lot about what were they trying to say about equality. So like within Scandinavia, they get the Danes get the kind of joke about being pretty laid back. The Swedes are the ones who are really uptight and really rule oriented, and the Danes are the ones that are a little chiller. But egalitarianism is still like the absolute most important thing. Everybody contributes the same, and it's not communism though. That's really important. Like they don't think that all the resources should go to the state. They just think that a lot should, so that people can get taken care of.
Right.
And if that's the case, if this oh, and by the way, this film was shortlisted for an Oscar. Like, it's really, really critically well received, at least in English language stuff. My Danish is 0%. So getting translated stuff was like, we were kind of at a limit here. And there's a couple other Danish movies I've watched throughout my life that I was really hoping were still available somewhere, because I really wanted Dr. Aaron to see them, and they were not, which makes me so angry. So we were kind of stuck with this one. There's not a lot of English things with English subtitles available to us, which is frustrating. But so when I think about this, I think really this film does judge him, that he is the villain of his own movie, because he had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to participate in egalitarianism, and he continually chose not to.
Right.
The religion of the father and the family is Lutheranism, really strict Lutheranism. The Lutheran Church is still the state church of Denmark. And being baptized is an important part of being an official citizen in a lot of ways. And it's not really culturally influential, but it is definitely something. Like, when I went to a baptism, there were more people there than baptisms I went to in England. And I don't know too many people in Denmark that identify as active participants of faith, but the church is still an important pillar of society in some ways. But Lutheranism is very austere and always has been. Every stereotype you have in your mind of Midwestern Americans, like Minnesota, that's Lutheran. Like, those are Lutheran immigrants.
Why was Lutheranism the one that stuck in Denmark?
So Lutheranism was born in Germany.
Yes.
And so geographically we have that up and down.
They border.
Border. Lutheranism was actually most of Protestantism in Europe. Geographically.
Okay.
All of the Methodistism came out of the Church of England with John Wesley. And then Presbyterianism also came out of the Church of England and is seated in Scotland.
What about Calvinism?
Calvinism is not a denomination. It is a theological position that Lutheranism falls underneath.
Oh, got it. Okay, cool.
Largely. Yeah. Nowadays, there are 10 offshoots of the Lutheran Church.
Sure.
But I believe still the Danish state church is oriented towards Calvinism, which is the less free will oriented part of Protestantism, and the more we are rewarded for super hard work.
Got it.
Which quite matches the Danish cultural theology and the Swedish and the German, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
So,
definitely. I was fascinated by the element of religiosity in the film, and I did enjoy that part of the story in which he was grappling with that austere upbringing and kind of what kind of person it made him. And we got a lot of really great insights, both from him later on, but also from Jacobe, who probably knew him best of anyone, really. But
I think Jacobe knew him better than he knew himself, to be completely honest.
She definitely did. But I just wrote down like cool religious stuff -K. And I was
austerity is a huge
this to me.
Austerity is a huge part of Calvinism, and it's one of pardon me. In a lot of European countries, it's one of the claims for the beginning of anti-Semitism, because austerity of things and possessions is not part of most sects of Judaism. It is in some Orthodox stuff, but in most sects of Judaism, it's not necessarily a theological value,
right,
in the way it is in Calvinism. And so a lot of the more insidious stereotypes we have about Jewish people that don't even sound anti-Semitic to us, but are kind of grow out of the relationship between Calvinist states and Jewish diaspora. And kind of what that looks like. I thought it was fascinating that Jacobe was from a Jewish family, that was a story they chose to tell.
Yeah, me too.
They could have made it, anyway, I was fascinated. I fell down a couple Wikipedia rabbit holes about Danish Jewish people.
I thought it was fascinating, and I was so glad like, because you see early on, like you're introduced to Jacobe, and I was like, oh, we're in Temple. Like, what's happening? Whoa, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that insight into kind of the differing, religiosities in Denmark, and certainly the perspective between what I now know as Lutheranism and their opinion of Judaism within the Denmark culture was really, really an interesting part of the film. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, like, there's some things I really loved about this film in the way how matter of fact it is about bodies. Like when we see him having his first sexual experience, it's not romantic at all. It's very much like how I actually imagine a lot of people's first sexual experiences, like just very matter of fact, like, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
Jacobe has an abortion that's dealt with very, very matter of factly and very like, we're not going to wring hands over this. This is a consequence of another choice he made. And that's kind of what this goes for. And Lutheranism and Calvinism is very interested in bodies, our physical bodies, which is kind of, I think, another reason that a lot of Calvinist countries are a lot more pragmatic about it than we are. And because the Puritans that we get from England are like a complete pendulum swing away from most body pragmatism with Calvinists, because their Calvinism was a reaction to something rather than an organic thing, but that's a separate rant. Sorry. But I loved that matter of factness. I really appreciated, I don't know, Jacobe was the star of this movie.
Yeah, she definitely was.
And that celebration of like women whose histories we never ever get written down.
Right.
And what that kind of looks like. I really, really liked that. I think the movie doesn't like him. Correct. And that's why I am not a 3-hour movie person. There were definitely times in this movie that I was like, and can we hit fast forward? But like, if this was in English, there'd be lots of more stomping and like wailing. It's not my favorite kind of movie, but I'm not upset that I watched it.
No, neither am I. It was too long for my taste. But it was shot beautifully.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I think the juxtaposition, it took a long time to get to the juxtaposition of Jacobe and Peter Andreas, and this idea of egalitarianism, which I did not know was so very much important part of being Danish. And now, having had this conversation, I feel like I understand the movie so much more, and I understand what they were trying to do with putting them up against each other, and like the time they were together, and then what they learned from each other or didn't learn from each other. And like the way at the end that Jacobe was like, oh, well, like I wouldn't be in the position in my life that I am in now if I hadn't met you and learned from you. Which is a life philosophy that I try and enact all the time, to not have regrets about, past relationships and actions that I've taken. So I was just like, yes, I am here for this level of growth. And I think we're meant to believe that he got there in the end, certainly with this idea that he was going to give the remnants of his will to her school.
Yeah.
And I think eventually learned that he was better off alone than with other people. I feel real bad for Inger and his 3 kids. I even feel real bad for that girl he was seeing that was the waitress at the beginning that just disappeared, that I'm sure he dropped like a hot plate. Just left a whole country of scattered women.
I mean, there's a whole conversation to be had that when you harden your heart as much as he did, and you decide that everything is wrong but you, this is how you treat people.
Yeah. So I think, I wouldn't just recommend this movie for entertainment value.
No.
But I certainly am more happy about having watched it since we have had this discussion now. So I think it's a really interesting film to watch and discuss. I would also say you should watch our video as well, so that you can get the insight into the Danish viewpoint that Dr. Kristen provided so well, because that is certainly a big reason why I am now not as upset that I watched it.
there. And that's going to come up a whole lot more in the next two movies that we're going to watch for this month. Both are nonfiction. One is a documentary on the concept of hygge, which is the very kind of, it's terrible translated into English, but in English, the closest thing we have is that cozy feeling you get when you have fuzzy socks on and a warm beverage and there's a fire happening and you just are like good with life.
Yeah.
That's a major driving factor in Danish culture is hygge. And then we're also going to watch a documentary on the world's best restaurant called Noma, that is in Copenhagen, and the starting of the Nordic cuisine and how they relate to the land and what that looks like. And I think you're going to get a lot of egalitarianism in both of those as well. Cool. And the idea of welcome as an egalitarian entity. Every time I've been in Denmark, it's like Ireland. Like you don't walk in anybody's house without getting something to eat and drink in a lot of ways. Really, every country is good at hospitality, but America, we're terrible. The South is so much better than the North. We are terrible up here at hospitality.
We are not. And like, I'm from the West, and I'd say we're not great at it because so much of the Western attitude was shaped by like literally cowboys and like westward expansion and isolationism. So you get, Coloradans are pretty nice. I don't know that I would ever say welcoming necessarily. Yeah, I would say Philadelphians are welcoming in that we will let you eat at our tailgate. And we like a block party. Appropriate jersey. If you're wearing the appropriate jersey. Well, really, as long as you're not wearing an inappropriate jersey. Like that's a better. We assume you are one of us unless you tell us otherwise. Yeah, Pittsburghers are like, I think we are welcoming, but we're also super judgmental, and like there are hierarchies to our welcoming. We're real welcoming to people from Pittsburgh. We like it when people come to Pittsburgh and like Pittsburgh. But correct. You guys really love to tell people what's great about Pittsburgh. We do, but I don't know if that makes us welcoming necessarily as much. But we do like to be good neighbors. And that's a huge part of it. But by and large, Europeans way better than us at just generally welcoming other humans. And like in my travels in Southeast Asia as well. So real, and in Africa and South America, like Canada. I mean, really, it's just like, let me just keep listing the parts of the world that are, I'm sure that penguins in Antarctica are better than some parts of Pennsylvania. I've never been to South America, but you have, so I don't know if they were particularly welcoming in Colombia. They definitely were. Like I got fed, and it was one of those like, we're these random Americans asking people super intrusive questions about their lives, and they're like, "Do you want snacks?" And I'm like, "Yes." Would you like your snacks with your deeply personal questions? I'd really like to talk about Pablo Escobar and his effect on your personhood as you were one of his soldiers. They're like, absolutely. Would you also like Coke and cookies? I have homemade cookies for you. It was amazing. Oh, God, I love it. Man, my life is weird. Anyway, so next time we'll see you for a documentary, and we'll talk a little bit more about Denmark and Scandinavia, and I think a little bit about the diaspora and how Danes especially don't identify ourselves as a diaspora and why I think that is. So see you next time. Bye, everybody.